Hello, my name is Mike Fredrickson. I am the Curator and Education Coordinator for the Poplar Grove Vintage Wings and Wheels Museum. I'd like to welcome you to the third segment of our Fred Machesney Building Community series. This video has been made possible by Walm Associates. Today, we will be talking about the Bert Hassell connection. Machesney's move north was also a great benefit to Bert Hassell, who was planning a record-setting and pathfinding flight from Rockford to Stockholm. Hassell initially wanted to launch his flight from Chicago. However, he was unable to generate enough financial support from the city. Fortunately, the Rockford Chamber of Commerce liked the idea of launching the flight from Rockford and felt it could help put the city on the aviation map internationally. As we previously discussed, the Chamber of Commerce was hoping to turn Rockford into a commercial aviation hub, thanks to its central location. Machesney's previous airport location was too small to accommodate the runway length required for Hassell's heavy, fuel-laden Stinson Detroiter, which he named the Greater Rockford. The move to a larger location made Hassell's plans for a flight possible. Bert Hassell began his aviation career in 1915, taking lessons from Glenn Curtis. He received his nickname Fish after crashing into a lake. Later, he became an instructor at the Curtis Aviation School himself. He also had a very successful military career. He joined the service during World War I as a second lieutenant in the Signal Corps. He was assigned to McCook Field as a test pilot for Curtis aircraft. Once out of the military, he performed as a barnstormer in a Curtis Jenny and later worked for the Airmail Service. Fish recognized the commercial and military value of establishing a Great Circle route to Europe from the Midwest. The Great Circle route is the shortest distance from one point to another, and it often appears circular on a map. It was already commonly used in naval navigation. The Rockford Chamber of Commerce backed the project and offered support, understanding that the attempt would help put Rockford on the aviation map and bring a lot of media attention. For the flight, Fish was able to acquire a Stinson Detroiter, although he was initially turned down by the company. However, Edward Stinson, who was founder of Stinson Aircraft, was a friend and former colleague, and he personally stepped in and vouched for Hassell. Hassell put together a crew consisting of navigator and co-pilot Parker Shorter Kramer and a mechanic named Elmer Estes. Kramer was a former barnstormer from Pennsylvania and was also an inspector for the Civil Aeronautics Authority. The CAA was a precursor to the modern-day FAA. Hassell also enlisted the help of Dr. William Hobbs from the University of Michigan. Dr. Hobbs was an explorer and was already planning an expedition to Greenland. Hassell asked Hobbs to help build and prepare a landing strip at the base of Mount Evans in Greenland to use as a refueling stop. Mechanic Estes was unable to fly in the Greater Rockford due to the weight restrictions, was sent with Hobbs to assist in building that airfield. For good luck before the flight, Hassell's 5-year-old son christened the aircraft with a bottle of ginger ale. In the early morning on July 26, 1928, Hassell and his navigator Parker Shorter Kramer lifted off from Machesney Airport, then known as Rockford Airport, in front of a large crowd of over 20,000 people. The heavy aircraft rumbled down the grass runway, but struggled to gain lift. And as they started to reach the end of the runway, Hassell pulled back and forced the aircraft into the air. The aircraft struggled to climb and stalled when Hassell tried to turn. It crashed just southwest of the aircraft across the river on Wilbur Sade's farm near Owen Center Road. Fred Machesney and Shorty Kramer's brother Bill located the crash site from the air and picked up both Hassell and Kramer in Machesney's Fairchild FC-2. Hassell was extremely lucky the aircraft did not burst into flames since it was loaded with about 700 gallons of fuel, and the tanks were leaking after the crash. The aircraft's control wheel also had to be cut away so Hassell could get out. Both Hassell and Kramer vowed to complete the flight, saying, "We're going to fly to Sweden if we're both gray-headed before we get there." About a month later, on August 16, 1928, Fish Hassell and Kramer took off again, this time with a lighter fuel load. For this flight, Greater Rockford was able to stay in the air for over 7 hours, flying to Cochrane, Ontario, which was their first stop. Rain delayed their departure, but they were able to rest up, refuel, and depart for their 1,600-mile leg to Mount Evans, Greenland by 1 p.m. in the afternoon. Unfortunately, when they arrived to Greenland, they were unable to locate their refuel airfield that was built in Greenland by Mount Evans. But fortunately, as they ran out of fuel, they were able to land safely on the glacier. It took Hassell and Shorty Kramer 14 days before they found rescue in Greenland. They had to make a grueling walk towards the coast, surviving on pemmican and emergency supplies only. If that wasn't bad enough, a boat they boarded en route to the capital of Greenland to start their return trip home hit a reef while they were asleep in their bunks and sank. They once again survived, but depending on which way you looked at it, luck was either on their side or against it. Later, in 1944, an Army reconnaissance pilot spotted the Greater Rockford and reported it to Hassell, who was the commander of a base in Goose Island, Labrador. The aircraft had turned on its back, likely blown over from the winds over the last 16 years. Unfortunately, it was another 25 years before the aircraft was able to be recovered. The Greater Rockford was lifted off the glacier by a Sikorsky helicopter and then loaded and transported via a Douglas C-46 back to Rockford in 1969. The C-46 performed a touch and go on the same runway at Machesney Airport that the aircraft had taken off of 41 years earlier as a tribute. From there, it was then transported to the Greater Rockford Airport, which we now know as Chicago Rockford International Airport. From there, it was briefly displayed at the Colonial Village shopping mall, before once again being moved and stored in a hangar at Machesney Airport. It stayed there until the airport was just about to close. From there, Fish Hassell arranged for the aircraft to be moved to the SST Aviation Museum in Florida, where it was hoped it would be restored and put on display. Unfortunately, shortly after, the museum fell on hard times and closed as well. The aircraft once again returned to Rockford in 1978, and over the next 10 years, the aircraft was restored, and it can now be viewed at the Midway Village Museum in Rockford. Thank you once again for joining us for another Building Community segment. Please join us for segment 4, the Machesney Depression years. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.